Jake Epping is a high school English teacher who travels into the past in order to prevent the Kennedy assassination. But Jake is really not the only main character of Stephen King's latest novel, 11/22/63. The other main character is actually time itself. There's a great quote in the book, and it goes like this: "Life turns on a dime, sometimes toward us, but more often it spins away, flirting and flashing as it goes." Now, this was my first Stephen King novel. I've always stayed away from him, not really liking horror stories, but this is a very different kind of book. It's really a novel about what might have happened. What if Kennedy had never been assassinated? Would the course of the 1960s and the decades beyond, would they have been different if a single traumatic event had been averted? If only things had been different. Isn't that a phrase that we might have used at some points in our lives? How many times in our lives have we said, should have, would have, could have? Isn't there at times in all of us kind of an angst or a longing about a past that didn't go in the direction that we wanted it to, or about parts of our lives that didn't turn out quite as planned? Well, this is what King so masterfully examines in this rather too long but very intriguing novel. If Kennedy had not been at Dealey Plaza that day, would we have gone so far into Vietnam? Would so many have died? Would many of us who were the children of the 50s and 60s, would we have come of age in a very different kind of world? It's a great read, basically an escape from reality, the same kind of genre as H.G. Wells started and continued in those movies like Back to the Future or Peggy Sue Got Married. King asks the question, if history would have different outcomes if we could go back and try to change it. It's all about time. And Paul's theme in our second reading today is basically time is running out. For the world in its present form is passing away, he tells us. Jesus in Mark's gospel tells us the present is the time of fulfillment. The kingdom of God is at hand. And he called Simon and Andrew, he called James and John, he told them to follow him immediately, to let go of the past and to move forward. Well, Stephen King in this latest novel is in many ways in line with these scriptures this weekend. In this time travel novel, he basically indicts people who bathe themselves in this aura of nostalgia, who look back rather than forward and blindly glorify what came before. We can all get easily caught in believing that our past was actually better or simpler or kinder or more bursting with possibility. But King seems to point out that looking back is a crutch that we use when we want to escape the challenges that the present confronts us with. Now, for those of us who remember the late 50s and early 60s, the book is actually a fascinating walk down memory lane during a time when there were no computers and no cell phones and no iPads or iPods or faxes, a time when one could go to the airport 20 minutes before a flight took off, buy a ticket, board the plane without taking off shoes and belts. That time doesn't exist anymore. And we're told in the gospel that this is the time of fulfillment, that we must stay in the present. So the challenge is not to escape to the past and wonder, what if? What if one small thing was different? How would life have turned out? The challenge is to make the right choices in the present moment so that we can have a positive impact on the future. Much of what King bases his novel on is what's been called the butterfly effect. It comes out of what's called chaos theory, that sensitive dependence on initial conditions, where a small change in one place in a nonlinear system can result in large differences at a later state. This was coined by a man by the name of Edward Lorenz and derived from that theoretical example of a hurricane's formation being contingent on whether or not a distant butterfly had flapped its wings several weeks before. Now, I think we all know and accept that we cannot change the past, but there are two things that we can do. And the first thing we can do is we can stop allowing our past to negatively impact on our present by letting the past go. And secondly, we can make good choices in the present that will impact in a positive way on our future. I think the theme that confronts us from any of these time travel novels is that everything we do or choose not to do matters in some way. Our modest little daily tasks can change the future. A simple telephone call to a depressed person, a note to someone who is grieving, a hospital visit, simple gifts that one spouse gives to another, a smile to a grocery clerk, keeping our mouths shut and not saying all that's on our minds all the time, listening rather than giving counsel, not taking that second or third drink when we are about to get in the car and drive, controlling our anger when some other driver is pushing us off the road. Simple little daily things that can have tremendous impact on the present and future. Stephen King's latest, entitled 11/22/63, is a novel that challenges us to get beyond the nostalgia for the past. It's way too simplistic to think that our going back could change anything. Concentrate on the choices that we make today and how they impact the future. I'm sure all of us at times have wondered, how might life have been different, if only? Or what if this had happened and that didn't happen? What if I had taken that other job? What if I had married someone else? What if I had moved to another city? What if I hadn't gone to school there? What if my parents hadn't died so young? What if I hadn't got that disease or ailment or problem? What if? What if? But it's that kind of thinking that gets us stuck in the past. And it is a way of escaping the challenge of the present moment and what we are called to do right now. Just like Simon and Andrew, James and John, we're called to leave the past behind us, not to look back. We have to let it go. One of the great lines, and it took a long time to get there, was when Jake realized that his life changed when he said, "It was when I stopped living in the past and just started living." What do the scriptures tell us this weekend? Time is running out. This is the time of fulfillment.